At Crown, I think for as long as I've been here, it was always important to us to have the musical book tell the story of the show without relying on what you see. It's a higher coordinated project when all the elements, the visual, the music, the colors, the design, the graphics, when all of that stuff contributes to the concept, it makes it as strong as possible. But musically, it should take you on that journey itself. So in this particular show, we start with Gabrielli, the Renaissance Baroque period, and we want to take you on a journey from that very traditional sound through an experience where we do the Gabrielli fantasy that then takes us from the normal world into our fantasy, whimsical kind of presentation. And you hear that both in the change of the music, the addition of the sound design, the textures that the percussion and the front ensemble provide as well.
Yeah, it's a musical journey with a destination. And through this experience, we're afforded the opportunity of variation, movement to movement, piece to piece. And it's been really rewarding to thread that together and to sonically explore all these extremes, whether it's through the instrumentation and the contrast of high and low or brass percussion, naturally and organically, in a very unforced way, exploring all these different textures and combinations. It's been really rewarding.
And then we enter this fantasy world where we have these episodes that are strange and quirky and whimsical and have different sounds and characters to them that know that we've firmly landed into this different place. And then when you go through this journey, there seems like there's a spiritual component to that. And the Ave Maria for us was the obvious choice. Through looking through a lot of literature, that seemed like the obvious choice because it was a very recognizable song. When we were choosing that, I know for myself, I Googled, what does it sound like to see the face of God? Because for centuries, I think composers have tried to capture that feeling. For us in pageantry, that should be the closest that you get to that kind of moment.
When we first had our meeting, we talked about this. I think we were at the doors. We talked about the doors immediately, like wooden sounds. What are colors we can kind of use to create that sound of a door? And I think wooden door knocks, the claves that Clif wrote in part 2, trying to kind of emulate that, create those sounds. I think trying to create dreamlike sounds, honestly, in the battery. In the percussion feature, trying to not pick rhythms that are angular, but more round in nature, so it kind of has this floating feeling. So just trying to create emotion and by rhythmic choice, by vocabulary choice, which is kind of hard to do with drums, which are kind of limited in what they can do, obviously. We're trying to be smart in those rhythmic choices so we create a feel and a texture, sometimes more than rudimental vocabulary.
The brass team had some very unique sounds and very creative, innovative use of brass instruments, which is not only extremely entertaining, but just from a creative standpoint, very inspiring. And that gave me permission in the front ensemble to open a bag of sounds that normally we wouldn't get to use. Flexitones, slide whistles, xylophone cadenza.
I think The People Are Strange was probably oddly enough, it was one of the hardest things to do in there because it's such a quirky little song. And there are, quotes and usage of the Doors music throughout the show. And in the second part of the show, that's the one that we wanted to highlight because you go to this place where people are strange. We talked about using trombones and, the trombone thing in drum corps anymore, it's like you have to have slides. You have to have glissandos on trombones in your show. Because like every 4th grader or 5th grader that you put a trombone in their hands when you're teaching them, the first thing they want to do is a gliss on it. So we wanted to use a trombone not only for that effect, but also as it's a characteristic instrument of music like that.
Ron John, it's just kind of the last movement of part 2. The source tutorial starts with kind of almost like a cadenza. It's kind of like this drum speak. I'm going to try to figure out the exact rhythms of that, and then try to kind of formulate that into rhythmic or rudimental vocabulary. So paradiddles, patadas, things like that, but trying to be true to the source material at the same time. So trying to create a snare break that has, virtuosity to it, but is also true to the source material and not just playing notes for note's sake. And then trying to develop that moment, we're trying to figure out how do we make the snare drum sound otherworldly. And we kind of discovered this technology through Evans that it's all sensory based. So if I play a low note or a soft note, it creates one pitch. If I play an accent, it creates another pitch. So then that spawned this whole other idea of, wow, we can have a world of sounds here.
So there was that, and then this funnel thing, we actually had this idea years and years ago we never wound up using. It was a trumpet mouthpiece with different lengths of funnel or hose that you could buy, clear hose at Home Depot, and then different size of funnels. And Ben Harloff came into a camp with one of these, and he did this feature where he was bald at the time, and he had the funnel on his head. It was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. So we're like, we have to do that someday. So when we talked about this little episode here, we thought, let's bring back those funnel things. I think Crown has always been about soliciting an emotion to an audience. And working with Keith, one of my favorite things about working with him was when we do a segment of the show, invariably the first thing I ask him is, what do you want the audience to feel like? What we've done with part 4, the source material for a lot of that is Extreme Makeover by 𝙍𝙠𝙤𝙩𝙩. When you listen to the last third of that piece or so, there's this really brilliant section that starts off with everybody on bottles, water-filled bottles that are different pitches. And we heard that, and I was like, that's a cool sound that we could try to bring to drum corps. There's sort of a unison rhythmic section that happens a little bit later that we heard that we thought, man, people don't do that.
Yeah, there's a moment of part 4, kind of starts with a baritone feature, and we get into a full ensemble moment. And when I first got the score from Michael, it was a ton of brass notes. It was straight 16th notes for 20, 30 bars. It was relentless. And I remember when I first got, I was like, well, I won't play there. And I remember I texted Michael and he said, no, I think you should. So we went in and tried to color it the same way. So the snare drum part there literally is the exact rhythm as the brass with different inflection for accents, tonito markings, some rolls in there, some vocabulary, but pretty much doubled that. And then I think it actually progressed too with the front ensemble. They originally had kind of more of a motor part, and then we decided the entire drum corps should play that exact rhythm. So for a good 20, 30 seconds in the closer, it is a full drum corps playing a extremely difficult technique passage, and I think it turned out really well.
I think something fun for the home fan to do would be to go through the literature in our show and to listen to it and then hear what the drum corps has done with it.
I hope the audience takes it for granted how we've been able to, behind the scenes, weave piece to piece without it feeling segmented.
I think it's the moments you don't want to hear. And when I say that, their payback for all the money and all the time and all the work and sacrifice and discipline, their payback is what they get on the field when the audience shows their appreciation. I don't want to hear the end of Ron Johnny because I want the crowd to be so loud. I don't want to hear the end of Ave Maria because I want the crowd to be so loud. I don't want to hear the end of the show. Like, it's that, because then they get their payback.